Picture the most famous ancient monument you can think of. You see its silhouette in your mind, its shape defined by centuries of stories and photographs. But what if everything you perceive about that structure is only half the story? What if its true purpose, its deepest secrets, are not in the stones you can see, but in the empty spaces you cannot? For generations, the world's oldest buildings have been admired for their scale and beauty, yet they have held their most profound truths in absolute silence, tucked away behind false walls, beneath intricate floors, and at the end of passages deliberately sealed and forgotten. These are not mere architectural quirks. They are deliberate voids, chambers constructed to be lost, and their rediscovery is shaking the very foundations of history as we know it. Today, we are going on a journey to uncover 24 of these hidden chambers, from the heart of the Great Pyramid to the depths of a Mayan ball court. This is not just a tour of empty rooms. It is a detective story spanning 5,000 years, where the clues are written in stone and the suspects are the brilliant, enigmatic minds of the ancient world. The drive to uncover what is hidden is a fundamental part of being human. It is the same feeling that made treasure maps so compelling in childhood, and that fuels our fascination with locked doors and unsolved puzzles. Ancient builders understood this instinct perfectly. They knew that by concealing a space, they were elevating its importance from a simple room to a sacred vault, a boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the gods or the dead. These chambers were never meant to be found by the masses. Their power resided in their secrecy, their existence known only to a select few. And now, thanks to a revolution in non-invasive technology, we are becoming those select few. Tools like ground-penetrating radar and three-dimensional laser scanning are acting like X-ray vision, allowing us to peer through solid rock without ever touching a stone. We are discovering that these legendary structures are, in fact, Russian nesting dolls of mystery, with each new scan revealing another layer of complexity that challenges our most basic assumptions about ancient engineering and spiritual belief. So prepare to have everything you thought you knew about these landmarks turned inside out. We will venture into a subterranean world beneath a Mexican pyramid that served as a portal to the underworld. We will listen to the echoes in a 5,000-year-old tomb engineered to transform a human voice into a divine proclamation. We will explore hidden libraries, sealed ossuaries, and royal caches where the mummies of pharaohs were hidden to save them from thieves. This exploration is about more than just architecture. It is about understanding the human impulse to create, to conceal, and to connect with something greater than ourselves. Each hidden chamber is a message from the past, and we are finally learning how to read them. The greatest treasures of the ancient world were never gold or jewels, but knowledge, and it has been waiting for us in the dark all along. Think back to the simplest of childhood games, the thrill of finding the perfect hiding spot, or the anticipation of seeking out someone else's. That electric feeling of discovery, of knowing something others do not, is a thread that runs directly from our earliest memories to the feet of the world's oldest monuments. This is not a coincidence, it is a fundamental part of our psychology. We are wired for curiosity, for the narrative satisfaction of a mystery solved. A treasure map is compelling not because of the X that marks the spot, but because of the unknown journey to reach it. Hidden chambers are the ultimate real-world treasure maps, their X carved not on parchment but in stone, promising a revelation that has waited for centuries. Ancient architects were masters of this psychological lever. They understood that secrecy was a tool far more powerful than any lock. By deliberately concealing a space, they were performing an act of transformation. A room that anyone can enter is just a room. but a room that requires a hidden door, a moving panel, or a passage known only to initiates, that becomes a vault. Its contents, whether they are physical treasures or spiritual concepts, are instantly imbued with immense value simply because they are hidden. This was about more than just protecting gold from thieves. It was about protecting power, knowledge, and sanctity from the uninitiated. The chamber itself became a liminal space, a threshold between the ordinary world we all experience and an extraordinary, hidden realm reserved for the divine, the dead, or the supremely powerful. This spiritual dimension is crucial. In many ancient beliefs, the divine was not meant to be easily accessible. Contact with the gods was dangerous or inspiring and required mediation. A hidden chamber inside a temple or tomb physically manifested this idea. It created a sacred geography where the most profound rituals could occur in isolation, separated from the public ceremonies happening outside. The journey to such a chamber, often through a narrow, dark passage, was a symbolic descent, a stripping away of the mundane self before entering a space charged with otherworldly significance. The act of hiding was therefore an act of reverence. It was a way of saying that what happened within was too potent, too sacred for the light of common day. This deep-seated allure connects us directly to the people who designed these spaces. While our tools have changed from simple levers to cosmic ray detectors, the driving force remains identical, an insatiable need to know what is on the other side of the wall. The legends of hidden treasure that have circulated for generations are not just fantasies. They are echoes of that ancient understanding that the most important things are kept out of sight. Our modern archaeological quests are the continuation of this age-old story. We are the seekers, using technology as our torch, following the same intuitive pull that has always drawn humans to the unknown. The hidden chamber is a promise, a direct challenge from the past, and our fascination is the engine that ensures its secrets, one by one, will eventually be brought into the light. And so we arrive at the first and perhaps most staggering of these hidden spaces, a discovery that sent shockwaves through the world of archaeology. Picture the Great Pyramid of Giza. You know its iconic shape, the massive blocks, the long, sloping ascent to its peak. For centuries, we believed we had mapped its essential layout: the descending passage, the Queen's Chamber, the Grand Gallery leading up to the King's Chamber with its granite sarcophagus. It seemed the ultimate open book, a structure whose secrets had been laid bare by generations of explorers. But in 2017, a team of scientists using a technology that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction made an announcement that humbled every assumption. They revealed the existence of a cavernous void, a hidden chamber located directly above the Grand Gallery, so large it has been compared to the interior of a commercial airliner. This was not a small crack or a minor fissure. This was a deliberate, enormous space hidden for 4,500 years. The method of its discovery is a story in itself. The Scan Pyramids project employed a technique called muon tomography. To understand this, imagine cosmic rays from deep space constantly raining down on Earth. These rays create invisible particles called muons, which can pass through solid objects, much like X-rays, but with far greater penetrating power. By placing special detectors inside the pyramid, scientists could measure the density of the stone above them by counting how many muons passed through. Where the stone was denser, fewer muons got through, but in the area above the Grand Gallery, the detectors registered a surge of muons, indicating they were passing through nothing. A vast emptiness. It was as if someone had silently drawn a giant, blank rectangle on the pyramid's blueprint, a space we never knew was there. The immediate and pressing question is, of course, what is it for? The void offers no easy answers, and theories among experts are fiercely debated. One leading idea is that it serves as a structural feature, a relieving chamber. The king's chamber below is under unimaginable pressure from the millions of tons of stone above it. The builders brilliantly incorporated 5 sets of relieving chambers above it to distribute this weight and prevent the ceiling from collapsing. This newly discovered void could be part of that same ingenious engineering, a hidden cushion of air protecting the sacred space beneath. Another, simpler theory suggests it might be an internal ramp or a gap left behind by the builders, a sort of architectural echo of the construction process, sealed off when the work was complete. But the most tantalizing possibility is that this void had a ceremonial purpose. What if the grand but ultimately empty sarcophagus in the king's chamber was a decoy? What if the pharaoh's true funerary goods, the items he would need for his journey to the afterlife, were placed in this secret, inaccessible chamber high above the known passages? This would have been the ultimate security measure, a vault so well hidden that not even the most determined tomb robber could find it. The very inaccessibility of the space supports this idea. It appears to have no corridors leading to it, no doors. It was meant to be entered once during the pyramid sealing and then forgotten for eternity. The existence of the Big Void, as it's informally called, forces a profound shift in perspective. The Great Pyramid, the most studied, measured, and theorized about building on the planet, is still keeping its deepest secrets. It reminds us that ancient engineering was far more sophisticated than we often give it credit for, and that the spiritual beliefs of the Egyptians involved layers of meaning and concealment that we are only beginning to perceive. This isn't just a hole in the rock, it is a silent challenge to our understanding, a blank page in the middle of a book we thought we had memorized. Now, let's journey from the dry, sun-baked stones of Giza to the humid highlands of central Mexico, to a pyramid that rivals the great Egyptian monuments in scale but tells a completely different story. The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan is a breathtaking sight, a massive earthen structure faced with stone that dominates the ancient city's skyline. For decades, archaeologists studied its external form, its grand staircase, and its alignment with celestial bodies. But the true source of its power, it turns out, was not reaching for the heavens but delving deep into the earth. In the 1970s, a remarkable discovery was made almost by accident. Researchers found that the pyramid was not built on solid ground, but atop a natural cave system that had been meticulously enlarged and shaped by human hands into a tunnel stretching over 300 feet. This was no mere geological feature. It was a man-made passage leading directly to a point beneath the pyramid's very apex. This subterranean chamber was far more than a foundation. In the cosmology of ancient Mesoamerica, caves were not just holes in the ground. They were sacred portals to the underworld, often called Xibalba by the Maya or Mictlan by the Aztecs who came later. These were realms of gods, ancestors, and primordial forces. By constructing their most monumental pyramid directly over this natural opening and then enhancing it, the builders of Teotihuacan were making a profound theological statement. They were physically connecting their greatest man-made achievement to the most powerful spiritual geography imaginable. The pyramid became an axis mundi, a cosmic axis linking the 3 levels of existence, the underworld below, the earthly plane of the city, and the heavens above, which the pyramid's summit aspired to touch. The evidence for this sacred function was found within the tunnel itself. Excavations revealed a wealth of ritual offerings deliberately left behind. There were finely crafted pottery vessels, obsidian blades, and other precious objects, all placed as gifts to the deities of the world below. This suggests that this hidden space was not a forgotten construction access but the active, beating heart of the entire city. It is easy to imagine a procession of priests, the city's spiritual elite, descending into this dark, confined passage, leaving the bright sunlight and the noise of the metropolis behind. Their journey would have been a symbolic descent into the realm of the gods, a ritual reenactment of a cosmic journey undertaken to commune with divine powers, seek guidance, or perform ceremonies essential for the community's survival, like rituals for rain or agricultural fertility. This changes our entire understanding of Teotihuacan's grandeur. The awe-inspiring scale of the Pyramid of the Sun was not just for show, to impress visitors or demonstrate political might. Its immense physical presence was a direct reflection of the immense spiritual significance of the hidden world beneath it. The pyramid was a monumental capstone on a sacred wellspring of power. While the crowds gathered on the plaza outside for public ceremonies, the most critical interactions with the divine were happening in secret, deep underground, accessible only to a chosen few. This hidden chamber transforms the pyramid from a simple temple platform into a dynamic engine of belief, where the visible and invisible worlds were permanently fused together by ancient engineering and profound faith. But the story of hidden spaces is not confined to tombs and temples in the desert. It also unfolds within the heart of one of history's most iconic and contested buildings. The Hagia Sophia in Istanbul stands as a monumental chronicle in stone, its vast dome having sheltered worshippers for nearly 1,500 years as a cathedral, a mosque, and now a museum. Millions of visitors have walked across its magnificent marble floor, gazing up at its golden mosaics, completely unaware that for centuries, a secret lay dormant just beneath their feet. It was during meticulous restoration work that archaeologists made a stunning find, a hidden crypt concealed directly under the main floor and accessible only by a narrow, forgotten passageway. This was not a later addition but is believed to date back to the original construction in the 6th century under the Byzantine Emperor Justinian. The purpose of this sealed chamber is a captivating puzzle. One compelling theory suggests it served as a final resting place, a crypt for the remains of important religious figures, perhaps even patriarchs or bishops. In the early centuries of Christianity, the relics of saints and leaders were venerated, and placing them in a secure, hidden location within the church's foundation would have been both a practical measure against theft and a profound spiritual act, literally building the church upon the foundation of its holy predecessors. Alternatively, the chamber may have functioned as a secure reliquary, a vault designed to protect the most precious relics of the faith, a fragment of the true cross, a saint's bone, or other sacred objects, especially during times of extreme peril, such as the sacking of the city by Crusaders in 1204 or the final Ottoman conquest in 1453. In this scenario, the crypt becomes a time capsule, a silent guardian of faith through eras of violent upheaval. What makes the discovery of this crypt so resonant is how it reflects the building's own layered soul. The Hagia Sophia is a palimpsest, a single structure inscribed and re-inscribed by different cultures and religions. Its walls hold Christian mosaics alongside Islamic calligraphy, a physical manifestation of historical transformation. The hidden crypt adds a deeper, invisible layer to this narrative. It is a space that belonged specifically to its original Byzantine identity, a secret that survived the dramatic conversion into a mosque and the eventual secularization into a museum. Its very concealment allowed it to remain purely what it was, untouched by the changes happening above, a silent witness to the passage of empires. This chamber's rediscovery also highlights a different kind of mystery. Unlike the pyramid's void, which was a structural unknown, or the tunnel at Teotihuacan, which was a spiritual focal point, the Hagia Sophia's crypt speaks to the simple, relentless passage of time. It was not hidden by grand design for eternity, but was likely forgotten through centuries of repair, renovation, and the accumulation of history. Its story is one of loss and recovery, showing how even in a building as intensely studied as the Hagia Sophia, the past can remain tucked away in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. It reminds us that history is not always about what is grand and visible, but also about what is quiet, concealed, and patiently waiting beneath the surface. Leaving behind the grand scales of pyramids and cathedrals, we travel to the island of Malta, where a different kind of mystery is carved directly into the living rock. Here, nestled underground, lies the Halsaflieni Hypogeum, a labyrinthine sanctuary that is not built upward but excavated downward, a three-level complex of halls, chambers, and passages that served as a collective burial site over 5,000 years ago. It is a place of profound silence and darkness, yet within its deepest reaches is a room that was designed for sound. This is the so-called oracle chamber, a small, oval-shaped room that holds an acoustic secret so precise and so powerful it seems to defy the era of its creation. If you speak in a certain tone within this chamber, your voice is transformed. It doesn't just echo, it amplifies, creating a deep, resonant vibration that seems to emanate from the walls themselves, a low hum that fills the entire space and can be felt physically in your bones. This is not a happy accident of architecture. This is deliberate, sophisticated acoustic engineering from a time we still call the Stone Age. The effect is both awe-inspiring and deeply unsettling. For an initiate standing in that darkness, perhaps during a ritual for the dead, the sound of a priest's voice chanting from an adjacent niche would not seem human. It would be a disembodied, omnipotent rumble, a voice of the earth or the ancestors. This sonic phenomenon would have completely altered the psychological state of those present, blurring the line between the material world and the spirit realm. The experience was likely designed to induce a trance-like state, where the boundaries of the self dissolved amidst the overwhelming vibrations. In such a setting, any message delivered by the ritual leader would be imbued with absolute divine authority. The chamber itself became the oracle, its acoustic properties the medium through which the mortal world communicated with the unseen. What is truly staggering is the level of knowledge this implies. The builders of the hypogeum had no formal understanding of sound waves, resonance frequencies, or harmonic principles as we know them today. Yet, through centuries of trial and error, or perhaps through an intuitive, sensory connection to their environment, they learned to sculpt limestone to manipulate sound. They achieved this by carefully carving the chamber's curvature and the specific dimensions of its niches to create a resonant frequency around 110 Hz, a low pitch that scientific studies have shown can affect human brain activity, potentially reducing stress and increasing focus or even promoting a state of heightened suggestibility. This was not just art or ritual. It was a practical application of a deep, empirical understanding of the physical world, a science of the senses developed millennia before the invention of the first musical instrument we would recognize. This hidden chamber, then, reveals a civilization that viewed sound not merely as communication, but as a fundamental, tangible force. The very vibrations of the earth were, to them, a sacred energy to be harnessed. In the absolute darkness of the hypogeum, deprived of sight, sound became the primary medium of experience. The resonant chamber was the central instrument in a multi-sensory ritual designed to guide the living and honor the dead. It stands as a testament to the fact that ancient sophistication did not always express itself in towering monuments visible for miles. Sometimes, the most advanced technology was hidden underground, an invisible architecture of vibration designed not to impress the eye, but to transform the mind and speak directly to the soul. From the resonant darkness of Malta's hypogeum, we emerge into the brilliant Mediterranean sunlight, arriving at another structure dedicated to the preservation of something equally precious: human knowledge. The Library of Celsus in Ephesus is one of the most photographed ruins of the ancient world. Its magnificent two-story facade, an enduring symbol of Roman grandeur and intellectual pursuit. Tourists stand before its reconstructed columns and statues, imagining the scholars who once passed through its doors. But what very few realize is that this breathtaking facade is, in a sense, a magnificent illusion. It is not the front of a vast, open reading room, but rather the ornate covering for a brilliant architectural secret. Behind that celebrated exterior lies not one single chamber, but a sophisticated, multi-layered system of hidden spaces ingeniously designed to protect its priceless contents. The genius of the library's design is found in its walls. The main chamber, where readers would have gathered, was lined with niches for scrolls, but the architects went a crucial step further. They constructed a double shell, an outer wall and an inner wall, with a narrow, hidden corridor running between them, all the way around the perimeter of the building. This created a series of concealed aisles and secondary storage rooms completely isolated from the main hall. This was not merely an architectural flourish, it was a highly advanced climate control system for its time. The primary enemies of papyrus and parchment are humidity and drastic temperature changes. By creating this insulating buffer zone of stagnant air between the outside world and the scroll collections, the library's designers effectively built a thermos. The hidden chambers maintained a more stable, drier environment, shielding the delicate texts from the damp sea air and the daily heating and cooling that would have caused them to brittle and decay at a much faster rate. This system reveals a profound understanding of preservation that goes far beyond simple storage. The librarians of Ephesus were not just curators, they were conservators. They recognized that knowledge is fragile and its physical vessels require active protection from the elements. The double walls were a monumental effort to fight entropy itself, to grant the words of philosophers, scientists, and poets a longer life. But the concealment served a dual, equally important purpose: security. In the ancient world, knowledge was power, and a library of this stature was a repository of immense political, economic, and military value. Maps, trade records, engineering schematics, and philosophical treatises were all targets for theft or sabotage. The hidden aisles allowed for the most valuable scrolls to be stored away from the public areas, accessible only to trusted librarians who knew the secrets of the layout. A visitor might be granted access to common texts, but the true treasures of the library remained behind a second, invisible layer of defense. This transforms our perception of the Celsus Library from a simple public building into a fortified vault for intellectual property. It was a place where knowledge was not just displayed but actively guarded. The grandeur of the facade was a statement of civic pride, but the hidden architecture was a statement of serious intent. It communicated that the ideas contained within were considered vital assets, worthy of the same level of protection as gold or jewels. This reflects a worldview where intellectual achievement was the true currency of an advanced civilization. The library was the hard drive of the ancient world, and its hidden chambers were the secure, climate-controlled server rooms, ensuring the data within would not be corrupted or lost. In an age before digital backups, the survival of these texts depended entirely on the ingenuity of the structures built to house them, making the silent, empty spaces behind the walls at Ephesus some of the most important rooms in the history of human thought. Yet the very magnificence of the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus, one of the fabled Seven Wonders, was also its greatest vulnerability. its gleaming white marble and sculptural splendor, a monument so grand it gave its name to all large tombs that followed, stood as a beacon for every conqueror and tomb robber who passed through the region. For centuries, it was believed that the magnificent above-ground structure, with its ornate funerary chamber, had been stripped of everything of value, its secrets lost to the relentless plunder of time. The story seemed to be one of total loss, a wonder reduced to scattered fragments in a foreign museum. But then, archaeologists made a discovery that rewrote the final chapter. Beneath the massive foundation platform, hidden within the very bedrock, they uncovered a second, secret chamber. This was no ornate hall. It was a stark, rock-cut vault, accessible only by a narrow, easily overlooked stairway that descended into the earth, completely bypassing the grand and ultimately decoy chamber above. This hidden tomb represents one of the most brilliant acts of misdirection in ancient history. The builders understood a simple, brutal truth. A monument designed to celebrate eternal fame would inevitably attract those seeking to despoil it. So they engineered a solution of breathtaking cleverness. They created a public tomb, a spectacular chamber filled with all the expected funerary splendor, knowing full well it would be violated. But below, secreted away in the living rock, they constructed the true eternal resting place for Mausoleum. Its power lay not in decoration, but in its absolute anonymity. There were no grand entrances, no markers. It was designed to be functionally invisible, a ghost chamber intended to exist outside the narrative of plunder and destruction that consumed the world above. The psychological statement here is profound. In an age where a ruler's legacy was physically manifested in stone, Mausoleum and his queen Artemisia were making a final, defiant declaration of power. They were asserting that their true sovereignty could not be touched by the fleeting ambitions of armies or thieves. The hidden chamber was a bet on permanence over spectacle. The magnificent upper structure was for the world, a testament to their earthly power, but the secret chamber below was for them alone, a guarantee of undisturbed eternity. It was the ultimate security measure, turning the entire foundation of the mausoleum into a protective shell, a fortress of silence guarding its most important treasure, the sanctity of the tomb itself. This discovery forces us to reconsider the nature of these ancient wonders. We often see them as trophies meant for eternal display, but the hidden chamber at Halicarnassus reveals a deep-seated anxiety alongside the ambition. The builders were not just celebrating life, they were actively planning for a future they knew would be hostile. They were engaging in a silent, centuries-long game of chess against the grave robbers they knew would come. The existence of this chamber is a testament to that foresight, a masterstroke that almost worked. It suggests that for all their outward confidence, these ancient rulers were acutely aware of their own vulnerability in death, and they deployed their most ingenious architects not just to build monuments to their memory, but to design the ultimate hiding place for their physical remains. Approaching the massive stone lintel of the so-called Treasury of Atreus, you are immediately struck by a sense of grandeur. The soaring, beehive-shaped dome of this Tholos tomb, built for a powerful Mycenaean ruler over 3,000 years ago, is an architectural marvel. But as your eyes adjust from the bright Greek sun to the shadowy interior, you might miss the most telling detail of all. To the right of the main chamber, almost invisible in the wall's seamless masonry, is the outline of a small doorway. This portal does not lead to another grand hall. It opens into a modest, rectangular side chamber that was not just closed, but meticulously, permanently sealed shut with stones and rubble after its final use. While the main dome was designed to awe, this smaller room was designed to be erased from memory. The contrast between the two spaces could not be more stark. The Great Dome is a public statement of power intended to project the ruler's authority for eternity. The sealed side chamber, however, is a private, almost fearful gesture. What was so important or so dangerous that it required this level of concealment within a structure that was itself hidden beneath an earthen mound? One compelling theory is that this was the true treasury room. While the main chamber might have held the sarcophagus and a selection of grave goods for ceremonial display, the most priceless objects, the finest goldwork, the most potent ritual vessels, the ruler's personal weapons could have been hidden away in this vault. By sealing it, the Mycenaeans were creating a final, impenetrable safe deposit box, protecting the king's wealth for his use in the afterlife from the very real threat of tomb robbers. Yet, the act of sealing might point to a motivation far more complex than simple security. Another possibility is that this chamber held the remains of others, perhaps sacrificed retainers, loyal soldiers, or family members intended to accompany the king. In many ancient cultures, the transition to the afterlife was perilous, and one did not make the journey alone. The permanent closure of the chamber would have then been a ritual act, a way of severing the connection between the world of the living and these companions, ensuring their spirits remained bound to serve the primary occupant for eternity. It was a sacred contract sealed in stone. This leads to the most intriguing interpretation, that the chamber itself was considered ritually charged or dangerous. The Mycenaeans had a profound and cautious relationship with the spirit world. The afterlife was not a distant paradise but a powerful, active force that could bleed back into the world of the living if not properly managed. The side chamber might have been used for final, potent funerary rites that, once completed, created a spiritual contamination or generated a power that was too volatile to be left accessible. Sealing the door was not just about hiding something, it was about containing it. It was a way of saying that what happened in that room was for the gods and the dead alone, and that its energy must never again be disturbed by the living. Perfectly fitted stones were a barrier in more than just a physical sense. This single, forgotten room, therefore, tells a deeper story than the grand dome that contains it. It speaks to a cultural mindset where death was not an end, but a transition so potent that it required architectural safeguards. The Mycenaeans built not just a tomb, but a controlled spiritual environment where the most powerful forces were permanently locked away, ensuring the king's peaceful eternity and the safety of the world he left behind. But the desire for hidden spaces was not confined to tombs and temples. It was woven into the very fabric of daily life for the Roman elite. Step inside a wealthy Roman domus, a city house in a place like Pompeii. Your eyes would be drawn upward to the open sky of the atrium, or across the intricate, colorful mosaics that carpeted the floors. Every surface spoke of prosperity and public-facing refinement. Yet, beneath your feet, quite literally, existed an entire shadow world unknown to most guests, the Cryptoporticus. This was not a single room but a network of semi-subterranean, barrel-vaulted corridors, running like secret arteries beneath the main living quarters. Cool, dark, and windowless, these passages were a masterpiece of practical architecture, serving a multitude of hidden functions that were essential to maintaining the carefully crafted illusion of the household above. The most immediate purpose was wonderfully pragmatic: climate control. In the heat of a Mediterranean summer, these underground corridors became a natural refrigerator. The thick earth and stone walls insulated the space, creating a cool, stable environment perfect for storing perishable goods like wine, oil, and grains. This was the ancient equivalent of a walk-in pantry, but its utility went far beyond storage. The Cryptoporticus also functioned as a climate-controlled thoroughfare. For the family and their privileged guests, it offered a shaded, cool route to move between different wings of the house without having to cross the sun-baked central courtyard. It was a private, indoor street that provided comfort and convenience away from the elements. However, the most socially revealing function of the Cryptoporticus was its role in managing the rigid hierarchy of Roman life. A wealthy Roman household was a microcosm of the empire itself, with the paterfamilias at the top and a large staff of slaves and servants at the bottom. The public areas of the house were for the master to receive clients and impress peers, but the constant, bustling activity required to sustain that lifestyle, the cooking, cleaning, and serving, had to be kept out of sight. The Cryptoporticus served as the ultimate service corridor, an invisible backstage area. Slaves could move swiftly and silently through these underground passages, carrying food from the kitchens to the triclinium, or fetching supplies from the storerooms, all without ever crossing the path of an important visitor. This architectural segregation ensured the public face of the home remained one of effortless elegance, concealing the frantic labor that made it possible. The house of the Cryptoporticus in Pompeii offers a perfect case study. Here, the underground network was particularly elaborate, with well-built corridors featuring polished plaster walls. It allowed the family an extraordinary degree of privacy and security. In a society where political fortunes could change overnight, a hidden back door or an unseen escape route was a valuable asset. The Cryptoporticus could provide a discreet way for someone to enter or leave the house without being observed, whether for a secret meeting or a hurried flight from danger. This transforms our understanding of the Roman domus from a simple residence into a dynamic environment of public performance and private reality. The opulent mosaics above represented the family's status, while the silent, dimly lit corridors below facilitated the complex social mechanics that upheld that status. The Cryptoporticus was the ultimate tool for curating perception, a hidden world that allowed the Romans to master the art of keeping up appearances. Yet for all the bustling public activity on its terraces, the true heart of the Ziggurat may have been a place of absolute silence and solitude. Recent surveys using non-invasive techniques have hinted at a tantalizing possibility deep within the core of the Great Ziggurat at The data suggests the existence of a sealed chamber, a room completely enclosed by the massive mud brick layers of the structure, with no connecting doorways to the external staircases that worshippers would have climbed. This was not a space for public gathering. It was a hidden sanctum, deliberately and permanently isolated from the world outside. Access to it, if it existed at all, would have been an arduous, secret process known only to a select few. This chamber represents the ultimate expression of Mesopotamian spirituality, a physical manifestation of the belief that the divine was both immensely powerful and immensely dangerous. This hidden room was almost certainly the innermost sanctum, the Holy of Holies, a place where the high priest alone would undertake the perilous task of communicating with the city's patron god, who was believed to physically reside within the temple that once crowned the Ziggurat. The act of entering this space was not a simple prayer session. It was a ritual of cosmic significance. The high priest would have undergone elaborate purification rites, perhaps fasting and chanting for days before attempting to cross the threshold. The chamber's profound isolation was essential. It created a vacuum, a space free from the distractions and impurities of the mortal world, a clean room for the soul where a clear connection to the divine could be established. In the absolute silence and darkness, the priest would seek guidance, interpret omens, and perform rituals believed to maintain the cosmic order upon which the city's survival depended. The hidden nature of this chamber reinforced a fundamental social and religious hierarchy. The thousands of citizens who ascended the Ziggurat steps did so to worship from a distance, to be part of a collective act of faith. They could see the temple at the summit, but they could never enter its most sacred space. The knowledge that such a chamber existed, that a single individual could go where they could not, would have cemented the priestly class's authority. It visually demonstrated that direct contact with the divine was a terrifying privilege, a burden too great for the common person to bear. This was not about exclusion for its own sake, but about managing a force considered as volatile as it was vital. The god's power could bring blessings like abundant harvests and military victory, but improper contact could bring divine wrath. The hidden chamber acted as a spiritual containment field, a controlled environment where this immense power could be safely channeled by a single, trained expert for the benefit of the entire community. This concept transforms the ziggurat from a simple staircase to heaven into a complex theological machine. The entire structure becomes a filter, with each ascending terrace moving the worshipper further from the mundane and closer to the divine. The public platforms were the outer filter where the community could participate, but the final, hidden chamber was the inner filter, the precise point of connection. Its very invisibility was its power. It taught that the divine, while present everywhere, revealed its true face only in the most secret, protected of spaces. The great ziggurat of therefore, stands not just as an architectural marvel, but as a monument to a sophisticated understanding of the sacred, where the most important conversations between humanity and the gods happened not in the open air, but in a room so secret we are still not entirely sure it is there. The journey through the narrow, towering sick of Petra builds an almost unbearable anticipation, with the canyon walls gradually revealing a sliver of what is to come. And then there it is, the Treasury or Al-Kosne, its ornate Hellenistic facade glowing in the desert sun, looking less like it was carved and more like it was gently revealed by the wind. It is a moment of pure theatrical spectacle designed to overwhelm any visitor, but as you step closer past the grand columns and beneath the towering eagle symbol, you realize the facade is a magnificent deception. The entrance is surprisingly small and plain, leading not into a vast, richly decorated hall, but into a single, square, and starkly undecorated chamber. The breathtaking exterior gives way to an interior of startling simplicity, a quiet, hollow space that feels almost unfinished after the riot of sculpture outside. This, however, is only the first layer of the mystery, for within this first chamber, on the wall opposite the entrance, is another, even smaller and more inconspicuous doorway. This second portal leads deeper into the cliff, descending into a second, more secluded room. This inner sanctum is even plainer, more deeply set into the rock, and far more difficult to access. The deliberate contrast between the public face and the private heart of the structure is the key to understanding its true purpose. The Nabateans, the brilliant desert traders who built Petra, were masters of illusion and control. They understood that the best way to protect something was not just to lock it away, but to disguise its very nature. The overwhelming beauty of the facade served as a distraction, focusing all attention on the public spectacle while the truly valuable or sacred elements were hidden in the unadorned, layered spaces behind it. The debate over Al-Kosne's original function hinges on this very architecture of concealment. The popular name, the Treasury, comes from a local Bedouin legend that an Egyptian pharaoh hid his treasure in the stone urn carved at the top of the facade. Hence the visible bullet marks from people shooting at it in a futile attempt to release the supposed riches. While this is folklore, it points to a deeper truth. The layered, secretive interior layout is highly suggestive of a secure treasury. The outer chamber could have been a receiving area for priests or officials, while the inner, sunken room, accessible only to a trusted few, would have been the ideal vault for storing the Nabatean kingdom's immense wealth derived from the incense trade, gold, precious stones, and artifacts. The security was not in complex locks, but in the psychology of the space. Few would suspect that the real treasure lay beyond the initial, disappointing room. Yet the stronger possibility is that Al-Kosne was a royal tomb. In Nabatean culture, as in many others, the tombs of kings were often the most elaborate and secure structures. The grand facade was a very public declaration of the ruler's power and legacy, a permanent advertisement of their status carved into the very landscape they controlled. The simple interior chambers, however, align with Nabatean funerary practices, which focused on the spiritual essence of the burial rather than elaborate interior decoration. The innermost room, difficult to access and shrouded in darkness, would have been the perfect eternal resting place, its seclusion ensuring the king's spirit remained undisturbed. The layered concealment then becomes a spiritual security system, protecting the sanctity of the tomb from both physical desecration and spiritual interference. This architectural strategy of layered secrecy is what makes Al-Kosne a masterpiece of Nabatean ingenuity. It was a building that spoke in two languages simultaneously. To the caravan merchant, the diplomat, or the common citizen, it proclaimed power, wealth, and sophistication through its breathtaking exterior. But to the initiated, the priests, the royal family, the tomb's caretakers, it whispered of something deeper: security, sanctity, and mystery. The building managed perception perfectly, using grandeur as a cloak for what was truly important. It teaches us that in the ancient world, the most significant spaces were often not the most ornate, but the most effectively hidden. The true treasure of Petra's treasury was not what was displayed for all to see, but what was kept silently in the dark behind a second, forgotten door. Long before the stones of the Great Pyramid were laid, and centuries before the great monoliths of Stonehenge were raised, the people of ancient Ireland were engineering a structure of breathtaking complexity. Newgrange, a massive, grass-covered mound rising from the Boyne Valley, is a passage tomb built over 5,000 years ago. Its most famous feature is the winter solstice alignment, where the rising sun on the shortest day of the year sends a narrow beam of light deep through a roof box above the entrance, illuminating the central chamber for a precious few minutes. This phenomenon is a public spectacle today, drawing crowds who witness this ancient astronomical clock in action. But hidden within this very public display is a secret meant for only one. Along the main passage, before you reach the grand, cruciform central chamber, a small, inconspicuous recess opens in the wall. It is a cramped, cell-like space, barely large enough for a single person to stand. This is the so-called priest's hole, and its existence suggests that the solstice event was not a spectacle for the masses, but a carefully staged ritual with layers of participation and meaning. Imagine the scene on a cold, dark solstice morning 5 millennia ago. A community has gathered outside the great mound, perhaps chanting or praying, their breath misting in the frigid air. A select group, the elders or the ritual leaders, would have entered the tomb, proceeding down the long, narrow passageway into the central chamber. The atmosphere inside would have been thick with anticipation, the darkness absolute, the air still and ancient. But one individual would have separated from the group. This person, perhaps the highest-ranking shaman or priest, would have slipped into the hidden side chamber, disappearing from view. From this unique vantage point, they would have experienced the solstice in a way no one else could. While those in the main chamber saw the beam of light flood the space before them, the individual in the recess would have witnessed the light's journey. They would have seen the sunbeam as a sliver of gold slicing through the darkness of the passage, watching it travel like a celestial arrow toward the heart of the tomb. This privileged perspective was not just about getting a better view, it was about accessing a different level of spiritual experience. In the main chamber, the event was communal. The light arrived, it illuminated the carved spirals on the walls, and it was shared by the group. For the person in the hidden recess, however, the experience was solitary and profoundly intimate. They were not witnessing the light's destination, but its origin and its path. They were observing the mechanism of the miracle itself, the connection between the cosmic order outside and the sacred geometry inside. This would have positioned them as the interpreter of the event, the one who understood the deeper mechanics of the universe. Their separation from the group physically reinforced their elevated spiritual status. They were both part of the ritual and apart from it, a mediator between the people waiting in the dark and the divine light making its way toward them. The tiny chamber, therefore, speaks volumes about the role of exclusive knowledge in Neolithic society. It highlights a world where spiritual power was not democratic but hierarchical. The ability to witness the solstice from that specific angle, to understand the precise alignment and its implications, was a form of power. It was knowledge that was literally hidden in plain sight, accessible only to those deemed worthy. This transforms Newgrange from a simple calendar or a communal tomb into a sophisticated ritual machine. Every aspect of its design, from the grand roof box to the smallest niche, was intentional. The architecture was engineered to control not just light, but human experience, creating a tiered system of revelation that reinforced the social and spiritual order. The priest's hole is a powerful reminder that in the ancient world, seeing something from a different angle wasn't just a matter of perspective, it was the key to ultimate authority. The legend is one of the most enduring in all of mythology, a fearsome half-man, half-bull creature imprisoned by a vengeful king within an inescapable labyrinth, a maze so complex that none who entered could ever find their way out. This story of the Minotaur and the hero Theseus who slays it is inextricably linked to the Bronze Age palace of Knossos on the island of Crete. For centuries, it was considered pure fiction, a fantastical tale spun by later Greek poets to explain the ruins of a civilization they no longer understood. But what if the myth wasn't born from thin air? What if it was a distorted memory, a poetic explanation for something very real that the ancients encountered? The sprawling, multi-leveled complex of Knossos, with its bewildering arrangement of corridors, staircases, and rooms, is labyrinthine in its own right. Yet, the true source of the legend may lie not in the palace you can see, but in the hidden world you cannot. Archaeological excavations have revealed that beneath the intricate floors and courtyards where Minoan courtiers once walked, there existed a network of subterranean chambers, crypts, and tunnels, creating a literal underworld beneath the vibrant life above. These sunken spaces served intensely practical purposes. The Minoans were master traders and storers of goods, and these cool, dark underground chambers were ideal for preserving the vast agricultural wealth of the palace, jars of olive oil, wine, and grain that formed the economic backbone of their society. This was the palace's basement, its logistical heart, but the function of these spaces almost certainly extended beyond mere storage. In a culture rich with symbolism and ritual, where the bull was a central, sacred figure, it is easy to imagine that some of these confined, cave-like chambers were used for religious ceremonies. The low ceilings, the darkness, the separation from the world above, all the elements were there to create an atmosphere of mystery and power, a place where initiates might have performed rituals honoring chthonic or underworld deities. This is where the line between archaeological fact and legendary narrative begins to blur spectacularly. Imagine a Mycenaean Greek soldier, a member of the culture that likely conquered the Minoans, walking through the vast, partially ruined palace for the first time. He hears strange stories from the surviving locals about rituals involving bulls, a potent symbol of strength that his own culture fears and venerates. He explores the complex and discovers stairwells leading down into darkness, into a confusing warren of underground rooms that seem to have no end. He cannot read the Minoan script. Their culture is a closed book to him. The only way his mind can process this immense, advanced structure with its hidden subterranean levels is through the lens of his own mythology. The confusing palace becomes the labyrinth. The memory of bull-centric rituals transforms into a monstrous minotaur. The dark, inaccessible storage crypts become the monster's lair. The legend is not a lie, it is an interpretation, a way for a later people to make sense of an architectural and cultural marvel that surpassed their understanding. The hidden chambers of Knossos, therefore, teach us a profound lesson about how mysteries are born. When a space is deliberately concealed or simply falls into obscurity, it creates a vacuum of knowledge. Nature abhors a vacuum, and human imagination rushes in to fill it. The very inaccessibility of the underground world at Knossos made it a perfect canvas for the projection of fears and fantasies. It was a place that could not be fully known, so it became a place where anything could be imagined. The palace itself, with its bright frescoes and sophisticated layout, represented order, civilization, and light. But beneath it lay a hidden, dark counterpart, a realm of mystery that perfectly mirrored the human psyche, where civilization rests upon a foundation of the unknown and the untamed. The Minotaur's labyrinth never existed as a single, purpose-built maze, but the real, hidden chambers of Knossos provided the physical and psychological blueprint for a story that has captivated humanity for millennia. Beneath the bustling streets of modern Rome lies a silent, shadow city of the dead, a labyrinthine network of tunnels known as the Catacombs. For centuries, these subterranean passages served as the final resting place for countless early Christians, their walls lined with shelf-like niches called loculi, each holding a body wrapped in a shroud. Walking through these corridors, you are surrounded by individual memorials, names and prayers etched into the soft tufa stone. Yet tucked away in this city of the dead are chambers of a different nature altogether, spaces that reveal a fascinating and poignant shift in funerary practice. These are the hidden ossuaries, rooms that were not for primary burial, but for the secondary collective storage of bones. After a body had decomposed in its loculus over a period of years, the bones would be respectfully gathered and transferred to one of these communal repositories. Unlike the marked graves in the tunnels, these ossuary chambers were often unadorned, unmarked, and deliberately sealed, their purpose speaking to a profound blend of stark practicality and deep theological conviction. The practical reason for their existence was undeniable. The catacombs were not infinite. As generations passed, the demand for burial space in these sacred underground cemeteries, located outside the ancient city walls according to Roman law, became immense. The ossuary system provided an elegant and respectful solution to this very real problem of limited real estate. It allowed for the perpetual use of the catacombs, ensuring that new generations of the faithful could be laid to rest in consecrated ground without requiring constant expansion of the tunnel networks. This was recycling in the most sacred sense, a way to honor the individual's initial burial while making space for the community that continued to live, worship, and die above. The act of gathering the bones was not seen as desecration, but as a necessary and reverent step in the long journey of the soul. But to view this only as a space-saving measure is to miss its deeper spiritual significance. For the early Christian community, which often faced persecution and emphasized humility, the concept of the individual was intrinsically linked to the collective whole of the Church. This was the communio sanctorum, the community of saints. The hidden ossuary became a powerful physical manifestation of this belief. In these sealed chambers, the bones of popes, martyrs, and common believers alike were mingled together. Distinctions of wealth, status, and even the individual identity so carefully recorded on the loculus plaques were dissolved. In death, they were truly equal, united in a sacred collective that transcended the earthly hierarchies of the world above. The ossuary was not a forgotten pit, it was a hidden reliquary of the entire community, a silent testament to the belief that salvation was not a solitary pursuit but a communal destiny. The very act of sealing these chambers away reinforces this idea. By closing off the ossuary, the early Christians were making a definitive statement. The period of individual mourning at the specific gravesite was over. The loved one was now fully incorporated into the larger body of the faithful departed. The memory of the person was not lost but was instead entrusted to the care of the entire church, both living and dead. The sealed door marked a transition from personal grief to eternal communion. This practice reveals a world view where the most sacred state was not individual prominence, but harmonious unity. The hidden ossuaries of the catacombs, therefore, are more than just bone rooms. They are architectural expressions of a radical theology that valued the collective soul over the individual self, a profound mystery of faith kept safely in the dark, waiting not for discovery but for the resurrection. Perched on an isolated mesa overlooking the stark beauty of the Dead Sea, the fortress of Masada stands as a monument to sheer human will. Built by King Herod the Great as a palatial refuge from his many enemies, its most ingenious features were not the luxurious hanging palace or the sprawling bathhouses, but its ruthless dedication to survival. The entire summit was encircled by a casemate wall, a double wall with a series of long, narrow rooms constructed in the space between the inner and outer layers. To an attacking force surveying the fortress from the desert floor, these walls appeared as a formidable, solid barrier, but this was a brilliant illusion. Within those very walls, hidden in plain sight, was the key to withstanding a prolonged siege, a secret network of storage chambers that turned the fortress's defenses into its larder and arsenal. The genius of this design lay in its deceptive simplicity. Each chamber or casemate was accessible only from inside the fortress courtyard through a single, discreet doorway. From the outside, there was no hint of their existence. These were not grand halls but functional, Spartan spaces, cool and dark, perfectly suited for their purpose. They were systematically stocked with vast quantities of food that could last for years: grain, oil, wine, and legumes, all carefully preserved. But perhaps even more critical in the desert climate was the sophisticated water catchment system that channeled precious rainwater from the mountaintop into a series of cisterns, some of which were also cunningly concealed. The defenders had access to a secure water supply without ever having to expose themselves or reveal the location of their reserves to the enemy. This architecture of concealment was a masterclass in psychological warfare. A besieging army's strategy often relied on starving out the defenders, waiting for supplies to dwindle and morale to crack. At Masada, the Roman legions who laid siege in the 1st century certainly employed this tactic, constructing a massive circumvallation wall around the base of the mountain to prevent any escape or resupply. They settled in for a long wait, confident that the harsh desert environment would be their greatest ally. Yet, from within the walls, the Jewish rebels holding the fortress could look upon the Roman camps with a grim sense of security. They knew something the Romans did not. Their resources were not stored in vulnerable central warehouses that could be targeted by projectiles or fire. Their survival tools were integrated into the very bones of their stronghold. The fortress itself was a living entity, its defensive skin hiding a beating heart of sustenance. The tactical advantage went beyond mere supplies. Some of these hidden chambers also served as secure mustering points for soldiers, allowing defenders to move troops along the perimeter quickly and unseen, responding to attacks at different points without being observed from below. Weapons and ammunition could be stored at regular intervals along the wall, meaning a defender never had to run far to rearm. This integration of logistics and defense created a self-sufficient ecosystem on the mountaintop. The hidden chambers were the ultimate expression of a fortress designed not just to repel an assault, but to endure indefinitely. They demonstrate that ancient military engineering understood a fundamental truth: the best defense is not just a strong wall, but a secret one. The real fortress was not the stone you could see, but the empty spaces you couldn't, spaces filled not with air, but with the promise of continued life under the most desperate of circumstances. The story of the pharaohs of ancient Egypt is often told as one of unchallenged power, of god-kings who commanded the construction of colossal tombs designed to secure their glory for eternity. But there is a quieter, more desperate chapter to this story, one that reveals a profound vulnerability. By the end of the New Kingdom, the Valley of the Kings, the very place meant to be a secure necropolis for Egypt's rulers, had become a hunting ground for organized gangs of tomb robbers. These were not petty thieves. They were often highly skilled workers who had helped build the tombs themselves, possessing detailed knowledge of their hidden passages and traps. The riches buried with the pharaohs were an irresistible temptation, and one by one, the sacred tombs were violated, their contents stripped, and the mummies within left exposed and desecrated. The divine journey to the afterlife, so carefully planned by priests and architects, was being systematically destroyed. Faced with this crisis, the priests of the 21st dynasty took a radical and unprecedented step. In a clandestine operation that must have stretched over many years, they embarked on a secret mission to salvage the remains of their former kings. Under the cover of darkness, teams of trusted officials would have entered the plundered tombs, carefully gathering the royal mummies from their smashed sarcophagi. They would have rewrapped the bodies, often hastily, and placed them into plain, unmarked coffins to avoid drawing attention. This was not a ceremony of state. It was a rescue operation, a race against time to save the physical vessels of the pharaohs from complete annihilation. The goal was no longer eternal glory, but simple preservation. Their chosen hiding place was a masterpiece of misdirection. Instead of seeking another grand, hidden tomb in the valley, they looked across the river to the cliffs of Deir el-Bahari. Here, near the magnificent mortuary temple of Queen Hatshepsut, was a simple, unadorned rock-cut chamber, designated today as TT 320. It was not deep, it was not architecturally significant, and it was completely unremarkable from the outside. Its power lay entirely in its anonymity. This was the opposite of a pyramid or a grand hypogeum. It was a hole in the wall, a place no one would think to look for a king. One by one, the salvaged pharaohs were brought here and stacked together, side by side, in a collective hiding place that became known as the royal cache. The discovery of this cache in the 1870s by the Abd el-Rashol family and its subsequent official excavation sent shockwaves through the world of Egyptology. When the chamber was unsealed, archaeologists found themselves face to face with a roll call of Egyptian greatness. Here lay the mighty Ramesses the Great, his regal features still recognizable after millennia. Here was Seti I, his beautifully preserved mummy a testament to the original embalmer's skill. Thutmose III, the legendary warrior king, and Seqenenetau, whose mummy still bears the brutal wounds of battle, were all gathered together in this cramped communal space. It was a poignant and sobering sight. These rulers, who in life had commanded armies and built empires, were now united in a humble refuge, their only remaining protection being the silence that surrounded them. The royal cache is more than just a collection of mummies. It is a profound historical document. It tells a story of reverence triumphing over despair. The priests who undertook this dangerous task were not motivated by treasure. They were driven by a deep-seated religious duty to protect the sanctity of their kings. They understood that without the preserved body, the soul's journey in the afterlife was impossible. This clandestine project was the final, desperate act of a civilization trying to hold onto its past in the face of collapse and decay. The cache represents a moment when the divine mythology of the pharaoh collided with the harsh reality of human greed, and the response was not more grandeur, but the humble, powerful act of hiding. The greatest security, in the end, was not found in complex traps or deep tunnels, but in being utterly and completely forgotten. The journey from the desperate, practical hiding place of the royal cache in Egypt brings us to a funerary complex that represents the absolute pinnacle of planned, deliberate concealment. Nestled in a carefully chosen valley north of Beijing, the Ming dynasty tombs are a sprawling necropolis, a city of the dead built over centuries for the emperors of China's last native ruling house. Unlike the pyramids which reach for the sky or the rock-cut tombs of Petra which blend with the cliffs, the Ming tombs are masters of subterranean integration. Their grandeur is hidden beneath man-made mounds, great earth-covered tumuli that rise from the landscape like natural hills. But the true secret lies even deeper in the labyrinthine underground palaces that lie beneath these grassy mounds. These are not simple burial chambers. They are meticulously designed replicas of the Forbidden City itself, complete with vast ceremonial courtyards, throne rooms, and multiple antechambers, all carved from stone deep within the earth. And within these already hidden palaces, we find the most enigmatic spaces of all, the spirit halls. These chambers are the ultimate expression of a concept that guided Chinese imperial burial for millennia. The emperor was the son of heaven, and his death was not an end but a transition to ruling a celestial bureaucracy in the afterlife. His tomb, therefore, had to be more than a secure vault. It had to be a fully functional palace for his eternal spirit. The spirit halls were critical components of this otherworldly estate. They were not storage rooms for treasure meant to be admired by the living, nor were they spaces for future mourners to gather. Their entire purpose was to serve the emperor's spirit exclusively. These chambers were stocked with everything the imperial soul would require for its journey and its eternal rule. Exquisite ritual bronzes, finely lacquered vessels, suits of jade armor believed to preserve the body, and countless other objects of spiritual significance. Once these items were placed inside and the tomb was sealed, the doors were never intended to be opened again. The offerings were not for display, they were for use in a realm beyond human perception. This makes the spirit halls uniquely conceptually hidden. Their concealment was not just physical, achieved through tons of earth and stone, but also temporal and spiritual. They were designed to operate outside of time, functioning in perpetuity in a dimension accessible only to the spirit of the emperor and the deities he would join. The architects and builders were creating a machine for the afterlife, a self-contained universe that would spring into operation the moment the final seal was set. This required an extraordinary level of planning and faith. Every object had a specific ritual purpose, and its placement within the spirit hall was dictated by complex cosmological principles, aligning with the stars and the forces of yin and yang to ensure harmony in the next world. The chamber itself was a sacred diagram, a battery of spiritual energy charged to sustain the emperor's soul. The discovery and excavation of these tombs, such as the Dingling tomb of the Wanli emperor, have given us a glimpse into this profoundly secret world. When archaeologists finally breached the massive stone doors, they found the spirit halls exactly as they had been left centuries before, a silent, frozen moment in time. The artifacts were not piled haphazardly like loot in a pirate's cave, but were arranged with ceremonial precision, as if waiting for the emperor's spirit to take his place and begin his eternal reign. This undisturbed state is what makes them so archaeologically precious and spiritually resonant. They were never meant for our eyes. We are, in a sense, intruders in a private universe, witnessing a conversation between an emperor and his gods that was designed to be forever secret. The spirit halls of the Ming tombs stand as perhaps the purest architectural expression of belief ever constructed. Spaces where the line between a building and a prayer completely disappears, hidden for eternity not from thieves but from the living world itself. The majestic pyramid of Kukulkan, with its 4 grand stairways and 91 steps per side, has long been celebrated as a celestial calendar in stone, a monument perfectly aligned with the sun's journey to create the famous serpent shadow illusion during the equinoxes. For generations, our understanding of this wonder was focused entirely upward, on its relationship with the heavens. But a revolutionary discovery has completely inverted that perspective, suggesting that the pyramid's true power did not come from the sky above, but from a hidden world deep below. Using advanced geophysical surveying techniques, scientists have mapped the subsurface beneath the pyramid and revealed a staggering secret. The entire structure is built directly over a massive, water-filled sinkhole, a natural cenote concealed within the limestone bedrock. This is not a small pond, it is a substantial subterranean cavity, a dark, silent lake lying in wait under millions of tons of stone and earth. The pyramid, it turns out, is not just reaching for the sun, it is anchored to a sacred depth. To understand the profound significance of this, we must step into the worldview of the ancient Maya. For them, the universe was a layered reality. Above was the realm of the celestial gods, represented by the sun, moon, and stars. The middle was the world of the living, the earthly plane. But below the surface existed Xibalba, the underworld, a place not of punishment, but of powerful deities, ancestors, and primordial forces. It was a realm of both danger and creation, the source of water that gave life and the destination of souls after death. Caves, and especially cenotes, these natural wells opening into the groundwater, were considered the most direct portals to this powerful subterranean realm. They were seen as the mouths of the earth, places where one could communicate with the gods of the rain like the powerful Chok, or make offerings to the lords of Xibalba. A cenote was not just a water source, it was a church, an oracle, and a gateway all in one. The decision to build the pyramid of Kukulkan directly over such a portal was an act of breathtaking theological and architectural genius. It physically fused the human-made temple to the most potent natural spiritual geography available. The pyramid became far more than a platform for priests to get closer to the sky. It became a colossal connector, a cosmic axis linking all 3 layers of existence. The summit reached for the heavens, the body existed in the middle world, and the foundation was permanently grafted onto the entrance to the underworld. Every ritual performed on its steps, every chant offered from its summit, was therefore amplified, channeled through this direct connection to the divine forces below. The entire structure was effectively a massive spiritual antenna, with its base plugged directly into the power grid of Xibalba. This hidden cenote also offers a compelling explanation for one of Chichen Itza's greatest mysteries, the presence of the nearby sacred cenote, a massive open sinkhole where vast quantities of precious objects, from gold and jade to human beings, were offered to the gods. Archaeologists have long wondered why the main pyramid was not built right next to this obvious and dramatic portal. The discovery of the hidden cenote provides a sophisticated answer. The open sacred cenote was a public theater of sacrifice, a place for communal rituals where the entire population could witness the act of offering. The hidden cenote under the pyramid, however, was a private, elite conduit. It was a direct line for the priests and rulers, a secret channel for communication with the underworld gods that was controlled exclusively by the ruling class. This arrangement created a two-tiered spiritual system, one for the people and one, far more potent and direct, for the powerful few who literally stood atop the gateway. The invisible chamber beneath Chichen Itza, therefore, challenges us to see ancient architecture not just as form, but as function in a spiritual sense. The pyramid's grandeur was not merely for show, it was the visible expression of an invisible truth. The Maya engineers who planned this did so with an understanding that the most important foundations are often those that cannot be seen. They built a monument that was in constant dialogue with the world below, a testament to the belief that true power emerges from the dark, hidden sources of the earth itself. The Pyramid of Kukulkan stands not as a solitary achievement of human engineering, but as the crowning piece of a sacred landscape, a bridge between worlds whose most critical support remains hidden in the silent, water-filled darkness. While the great pyramids and temples were designed to project power for millennia, some of the most crucial hidden chambers were devoted to a far quieter, yet equally vital, purpose: the preservation of thought itself. As Europe navigated the political and social turmoil that followed the fall of the Roman Empire, a different kind of fortress began to rise, not to house armies, but to safeguard knowledge. Medieval monasteries became islands of stability in a sea of uncertainty, and within their thick, protective walls, a clandestine intellectual operation was underway. Tucked away from the main cloisters, often accessible only through a discreet doorway or a narrow spiral staircase, lay the secret scriptorium. This was not a grand library for public use. It was a workshop, a laboratory for the written word, and its location was one of the monastery's most closely guarded secrets. In an age where a single book could represent a year of painstaking labor and was more valuable than a farm, these rooms were hidden to protect their contents from the greatest threats of the age: theft, fire, and the deliberate destruction that accompanied war and religious conflict. The environment within a scriptorium was a study in controlled conditions, designed for a single, sacred task. Imagine a long, narrow room, its windows strategically placed to maximize hours of precious daylight but small enough to deter intrusion. The air would be still, the silence broken only by the soft scratch of a quill on parchment or the occasional gentle grinding of ink. Each monk had his own carrel, a small wooden desk, and his work was an act of profound devotion. This was not mere copying, it was a form of prayer. For hours each day, a monk would meticulously transcribe texts, his hand guided by the twin disciplines of faith and precision. The process was incredibly slow. A single Bible could take an entire year to complete, but the goal was not speed, it was perfection and permanence. They were not just preserving words, they were preserving the very intellectual and spiritual foundation of their world, ensuring that the works of classical philosophers, early church fathers, and scientific thinkers would not be lost to the encroaching darkness. The need for such extreme secrecy becomes clear when we consider what was at stake. During the Viking raids that terrorized coastal Europe, monasteries were prime targets not for their meager material wealth, but for the gold and jewels that often adorned the covers of their most important gospels. A raider could melt down a jeweled book cover in minutes, obliterating a masterpiece that had taken a generation to create. Later, during periods of intense religious upheaval, certain texts could be deemed heretical, making their possession dangerous and their destruction a political act. By concealing the scriptorium, the monastic community was creating a secure production line for knowledge. The location was known only to the abbot and the scribes themselves. This secrecy allowed the work to continue uninterrupted, even as armies marched past the monastery walls. The scriptorium was a kind of intellectual bomb shelter, protecting the fragile flame of learning from the storms of history. The impact of these hidden chambers is almost incalculable. Within their silent confines, monks did more than just copy existing works. They became unwitting editors and conservators. As they transcribed, they might add glosses, explanatory notes in the margins that reflected contemporary understanding, effectively creating new layers of meaning. Sometimes a single surviving ancient text would be the template for all future copies, its survival hinging entirely on the work done in one of these secluded rooms. The classical knowledge of Aristotle and Plato, the medical texts of Galen, the historical writings of Livy, so much of what we consider the foundation of Western thought passed through the hands of anonymous monks in hidden scriptoriums. Without their devotion, the Renaissance, which was built upon the rediscovery of these very texts, may never have ignited. These chambers were not relics of a superstitious age. They were the critical backup servers of civilization, ensuring that when Europe was ready to turn the lights back on, the knowledge to do so was still there, patiently waiting in the dark, saved by the silent, sacred work of those who understood that the greatest treasure is not gold, but a well-preserved idea. Of all the ancient monuments that stir our imagination, few hold a more mysterious presence than the Great Sphinx of Giza. For centuries, this colossal limestone creature, with the body of a lion and the head of a pharaoh, has gazed eastward from the Giza Plateau, its weathered surface holding its silence like a vow. But what if that silence is deceptive? What if the true secrets of the Sphinx are not carved into its exterior, but lie hidden in the darkness beneath its massive pores? The legend of hidden chambers under the Sphinx is one of the most enduring and controversial in all of archaeology, a story that blurs the lines between rigorous science, tantalizing clues, and outright fantasy. The debate over what lies below is a perfect case study in the delicate balance between our burning curiosity to uncover the past and our profound responsibility to protect it. The rumors have swirled for generations, fueled by historical accounts, psychic readings, and the simple, powerful allure of the unknown. In the 19th century, references by Roman historians to repositories of ancient knowledge hidden beneath the Sphinx were rediscovered, igniting the imaginations of explorers. This speculative fire was poured with gasoline in the 20th century by claims from mystics and clairvoyants who described vast, hall-of-record-style chambers containing the lost wisdom of Atlantis. These fantastical stories, while captivating, have largely been dismissed by mainstream Egyptology. Yet, they created a powerful cultural narrative that there was more to the Sphinx than met the eye. A narrative that refused to die even when early excavations and boreholes failed to find anything conclusive. Then came the science. Modern technology has given us the ability to listen to the Earth without breaking its skin. In the 1990s, a team led by researchers from universities in Japan and France conducted a ground-penetrating radar survey of the area in front of the Sphinx. Their results were not the stuff of fantasy, but they were deeply intriguing. The radar signals revealed several distinct anomalies, areas where the density of the rock changed dramatically beneath the monument's pores and along its flanks. These were not the vast, ornate halls of legend, but they were voids, spaces that were decidedly different from the solid bedrock. Similar surveys have since suggested the possibility of a large, rectangular chamber deep beneath the Sphinx's left paw and tunnels or fissures running near its body. The scientific data did not confirm the wildest dreams, but it did something more important. It legitimized the mystery. It proved that there are hidden features under the Sphinx. The question is no longer if they exist, but what they are. This is where the real debate begins, a debate that encapsulates the entire challenge of modern archaeology. One school of thought argues that these voids are entirely natural. The Giza Plateau is composed of limestone that is shot through with fissures and tunnels created by water erosion over millions of years. It is entirely plausible that the anomalies detected are simply ancient solution cavities, the kind of empty spaces commonly found in limestone formations. Another, more moderate theory suggests they could be ancient repair shafts. We know that the Sphinx has been restored and repaired numerous times throughout its long history, from the time of the pharaoh Thutmose IV to the modern era. It is possible that these voids are the remnants of tunnels dug by ancient workers to access the Sphinx's foundation for stabilization work, later filled in and forgotten. But the most tantalizing possibility, and the one that keeps the mystery alive, is that these spaces are indeed man-made chambers with a deliberate purpose. Could they be small offering chapels sealed at the time of the Sphinx's dedication? Might they be architectural niches related to an earlier, unknown phase of construction? The sheer scale of the Sphinx suggests it was a monument of supreme importance, and it would be unusual for such a structure not to have some form of symbolic foundation or dedication deposit. The voids could be the archaeological equivalent of a cornerstone, holding ritual objects meant to sanctify the site for eternity. And this is precisely where the mystery hits an immovable object, the imperative of preservation. The Sphinx is fragile. Its body has been ravaged by wind, sand, and most damagingly, rising groundwater and modern pollution. Any attempt to excavate or drill into these potential chambers would be incredibly risky. The vibrations from heavy machinery could cause catastrophic stress fractures in the already weakened limestone. Unsealing a space that has been closed for thousands of years could expose it to humidity and temperature changes that would rapidly degrade anything inside. The Sphinx is not just an archaeological site, it is a global icon, a symbol of human endurance. The potential reward of discovery must be weighed against the very real possibility of causing irreversible damage. Is it worth risking the monument itself to find out what might be hidden below? This ethical dilemma leaves us in a state of suspended animation. The lost chambers of the Sphinx remain tantalizingly unresolved, a mystery protected not by cunning ancient traps but by our own modern conscience. The debate is no longer just about what is there, it's about whether we should ever know. It forces us to consider that some secrets are meant to be kept, that the greatest respect we can show this ancient guardian is to let it keep its silence. For now, the voids beneath the Sphinx remain a blank space on the map, a reminder that in our quest to uncover every secret of the past, patience and preservation must sometimes take precedence over the thrilling but perilous drive to dig. Our journey through hidden chambers has taken us deep beneath pyramids and behind library walls, but some of the most ingenious concealment occurred not on solid ground, but on the rolling waves of the Mediterranean. Imagine a sturdy Phoenician merchant ship, its sail billowing in the wind, cutting a path through the sea somewhere between the Levant and the central Mediterranean around 2,700 years ago. This vessel was a workhorse of the ancient world, its main hold packed with the standard goods of a thriving maritime trade, ceramics, raw materials, and amphorae filled with common wine or grain. To any customs official or opportunistic pirate who might have come aboard, it would have appeared as a typical, moderately valuable cargo vessel. But the ship held a secret, one that would only be revealed by tragedy when it sank off the coast of Malta, settling on the seabed and preserving its clandestine architecture for millennia. The discovery of this shipwreck, known to archaeologists as the Exlendi wreck, provided a stunning insight into the practical realities of ancient commerce. During the meticulous excavation of the site, researchers began to notice something unusual about the ship's construction. While the main cargo area was scattered with a variety of artifacts, their attention was drawn to a specific section of the hull. Here they found evidence of a deliberately constructed hidden compartment, a sealed-off space that was physically separated from the rest of the ship's hold. This was not a random cavity formed by debris. It was a purpose-built secret chamber, a waterproofed and reinforced vault designed to be overlooked. Inside this concealed space, the archaeologists found a concentration of a specific type of amphora, distinct from those in the main cargo. The very fact that these jars were segregated and hidden suggested their contents were of exceptionally high value. This is where the story moves from simple architecture to high-stakes economics. The Phoenicians were the master traders of the ancient world, famed for their maritime skills and their commercial acumen. They dealt in everything from Tyrian purple dye, extracted from rare sea snails, to precious metals and fine glassware. On a long and perilous sea voyage, the greatest risk was not always the storm, but the human threat of piracy or even simple greed from within the crew. A cargo of standard goods was one thing, but a shipment of the most expensive luxury commodities, perhaps the finest vintage wine from a renowned vineyard, rare perfumed oils, or even silver ingots required an extra layer of security. The hidden compartment was the ancient equivalent of a ship's safe. By keeping the most valuable part of the cargo secret, the ship's owner or captain mitigated the risk. If the ship were boarded, the visible cargo could be surrendered, potentially satisfying the attackers while the true treasure remained undetected. It was a brilliant strategy of deception and risk management on the high seas. The choice of Malta as the location for this discovery is particularly poignant. The island sat at a crucial crossroads in the central Mediterranean, a necessary stopping point for ships traveling between the eastern and western basins of the sea. For a Phoenician vessel, it represented both an opportunity for trade and a zone of heightened danger, where ships from competing powers might lie in wait. The sinking of this specific ship, with its secret still intact, offers us a frozen moment in time. It captures not a grand ceremonial act, but a routine business decision, the decision to hide your best assets. This transforms the concept of the hidden chamber from a static, spiritual, or defensive feature into a dynamic tool of global commerce. It shows that the drive to conceal was not limited to kings and priests. It was equally vital for the merchants who fueled the ancient economy, proving that even on the open ocean, the most valuable things were often kept out of sight, secured in a silent vault beneath the waves. The towering ziggurats of ancient Babylon were more than just stairways to the gods. They were the world's first great observatories, their open-air platforms offering an unobstructed view of the night sky. For generations, we pictured the priest astronomers of Mesopotamia standing beneath the vast, open dome of the heavens, meticulously recording the movements of the stars and planets. But this romantic image may be incomplete. A deeper analysis of cuneiform tablets and the architectural remains of structures like the Etemenanke ziggurat suggests a more sophisticated and secretive reality. It appears that the most critical astronomical work did not happen in the open, but within special, enclosed chambers built into the very fabric of these massive structures. These were not storage rooms or simple shelters. They were the precision laboratories of the ancient world, hidden away from the very elements that could compromise their delicate work. Imagine trying to take a precise measurement of a star's position with a simple sighting tool like a gnomon or an early version of an astrolabe. On an exposed platform, Even a gentle breeze could cause a flickering torch flame to dance, distorting your view. The ambient light from the city below or the moon itself would wash out the fainter stars, making them impossible to track. A sudden gust of wind could throw off your alignment by a fraction of a degree, an error that, over time, would compound into significant inaccuracies in your celestial maps. The Babylonians were masters of detail. Their astronomical diaries are famed for their meticulous, repetitive observations. They understood that for their data to have any predictive power, it needed to be flawless. The solution was to create a controlled environment, an astronomical clean room where variables could be minimized. An enclosed chamber with narrow, strategically placed slit windows aligned to specific celestial phenomena would have provided that perfect stillness. Inside, a single, steady lamp could illuminate measuring rods and clay tablets without interference, allowing for observations of an accuracy we are only now beginning to fully appreciate. The secrecy surrounding these chambers, however, went far beyond the practical need for a stable workspace. In Babylonian society, astronomy was not a pure science separate from religion and politics. It was the ultimate source of both. The ability to predict celestial events was synonymous with understanding the will of the gods. When a priest astronomer calculated the exact date of a lunar eclipse or the reappearance of Venus, he was not just demonstrating mathematical skill, he was proving that he could read the divine plan. This knowledge was a direct source of royal power. A king who could be forewarned of an omen, whether good or bad, could take public measures to avert disaster or claim divine favor, thereby solidifying his authority. The hidden observatory chamber, therefore, became a state secret of the highest order. Its location was likely known only to a handful of elite scholars who were intimately bound to the ruling class. This was not a place for public stargazing. It was a sanctum where the fate of the kingdom was literally charted in the stars. Within these quiet, darkened rooms, the Babylonians made breakthroughs that would shape human knowledge for millennia. It was here that they likely refined their understanding of the Saros cycle, the pattern that allows for the prediction of eclipses. Here, they would have compiled the detailed data that allowed them to create their remarkably accurate calendars and develop the mathematical basis for what would later become Greek and Indian astronomy. The confinement of the space fostered an intense focus, allowing for the kind of repetitive, patient observation that is the bedrock of the scientific method. The hidden chamber was the crucible where myth was separated from measurable fact, where the irregular movements of the planets were first recognized as having an underlying, predictable order. This was the birth of empirical science, but it was a birth that had to be kept under wraps, its power too potent to be shared with the masses. The legacy of these occluded observatories is a profound one. They remind us that the drive to understand the universe has always been intertwined with the need to control our world, and that some of history's greatest leaps in knowledge were taken not under the open sky, but in the secret, silent heart of a temple. Moving from the high seas of Phoenician trade to the rugged landscapes of medieval Europe, we find a different kind of power being secured in the shadows, the power of cold, hard cash. The Norman stone keep was the ultimate symbol of feudal authority, a stark, imposing fortress designed to dominate the surrounding countryside and intimidate any who would challenge the lord's rule. Its battlements were for archers, its moat for deterrence, and its thick walls were meant to withstand the battering ram. But the true lifeblood of this power was not just military might, it was wealth. And that wealth required a hiding place as formidable as the castle itself. Tucked away from the bustling activity of the Great Hall, often behind a door disguised as part of the stonework or concealed within the thickness of a wall, lay the castle's most vital organ, the forgotten strongroom. This chamber was the feudal equivalent of a central bank vault. Here, the Lord's treasury was stored not just sacks of gold and silver coin, but also the intricate dies and presses used to mint that coin. This dual function is why these rooms were often called mints. In an age before national currencies, a powerful lord had the right to issue his own money, a privilege that was both a source of profit and a declaration of sovereignty. The strongroom was therefore the engine of the local economy. The coins produced within funded the castle's garrison, paid for construction projects, and financed the lord's political ambitions. But this concentration of wealth made it a target far more tempting than any granary or armory. The threat was not only from outside armies laying siege, but from within the castle walls. In a society built on complex, often fragile loyalties, the temptation for a disgruntled knight or a bribable servant to pocket the treasury was a constant, lurking danger. The architecture of the strongroom was a direct response to this pervasive anxiety. Its location was deliberately chosen to be both central and secret. Being near the Great Hall placed it within the heart of the Lord's domestic quarters, under his immediate supervision, yet its concealed entrance ensured it remained separate from the daily flow of people. Access was typically limited to the Lord and his most trusted chamberlain or treasurer. The door itself was a masterpiece of deception, a slab of stone that pivoted on a central pivot, a section of wall that swung outward, or an entrance hidden behind a heavy tapestry. There were no giant, obvious locks. The security was in the secrecy. Inside, the room would be small, windowless, and perhaps featuring a trapdoor in the floor leading to an even more secure chest or pit, a final layer of protection for the most valuable items. This practice of separating extreme wealth from daily life reveals a mindset that echoes powerfully into our modern world. The hidden strongroom of the Norman keep is the direct ancestor of the high-security bank vault. The concerns that motivated a feudal baron are not so different from those of a modern banker. The need to protect assets from external theft and internal fraud, to maintain confidence in the currency, and to project an image of unassailable security. The psychological principle is identical. By placing valuables in a space that is physically intimidating and difficult to access, you imbue them with an aura of inviolability. The thick stone walls have been replaced by reinforced concrete and timed locks, but the intention is the same. We still build fortresses for our money, we just call them banks. The existence of these chambers also speaks to the nature of power in the Middle Ages. A lord's authority was not abstract, it was quite literally tangible, measurable in the weight of silver and gold stored in his strongroom. The ability to pay his soldiers, to reward his allies, and to display his generosity during feasts was what kept him in power. If the treasury was lost, his rule could collapse overnight. Therefore, the strongroom was not merely a storage closet. It was a strategic strongpoint as critical as the gatehouse. Its concealment was an active defense strategy, turning the castle's very architecture into a lie. An attacker who breached the outer walls would find storerooms, barracks, and stables, but the true prize, the financial means to continue the war, remained hidden, perhaps even within arm's reach, yet completely invisible. The forgotten strongroom was the ultimate insurance policy, ensuring that even in the chaos of a siege, the Lord's power remained safe, locked away in a silent, secret heart of stone. But the ambition of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, makes even the grandest hidden tombs we have explored seem almost modest by comparison. We are all familiar with his terracotta army, the thousands of life-sized clay soldiers discovered by farmers in 1974, standing in silent, battle-ready formation to protect their emperor in the afterlife. This army, however, is merely the outer perimeter of the security detail, the spectacular diversion placed in the foothills guarding the true prize. The real tomb, the emperor's final resting place, lies under a massive, vegetation-covered mound about a mile away, and according to ancient texts, it contains a secret so magnificent and so terrifying that it has given archaeologists pause for nearly 50 years. The great historian Casemate, writing about a century after the emperor's death, described an underground palace that was a miniature cosmos, with ceilings inlaid with pearls to represent the stars and constellations, and vast, mechanically flowing rivers of mercury representing the great waterways of China. For a long time, this account was dismissed as poetic legend, a fanciful myth about a megalomaniacal ruler. Then, science began to catch up with the story. Modern archaeological surveys have turned that legend into a compelling and cautionary scientific mystery. Teams using advanced remote sensing technologies like ground-penetrating radar and soil chemistry analysis have made two critical discoveries. First, they have confirmed the existence of a massive, sprawling underground complex beneath the mound, a labyrinthine structure of corridors and chambers that matches the scale of an entire buried city. Second, and far more startling, they have detected exceptionally high concentrations of mercury within this complex levels that are hundreds of times higher than what would occur naturally in the surrounding soil. The readings are not uniform, they suggest a specific, winding pattern, almost like the course of a river delta. Casemate's account of mercury rivers is no longer a fairy tale. It appears to be a factual, if mind-boggling, description of the tomb's interior. This presents an almost unimaginable paradox. On one hand, this sealed vault represents the absolute apex of funerary concealment, the ultimate hidden chamber. It was designed not just to be lost like the tomb of Mausoleum, but to be inviolable, protected by more than just stone and secrecy. The mercury itself is believed to have served a dual purpose. Symbolically, it represented the emperor's eternal dominion over his unified empire, with the quicksilver rivers mapping his realm. Practically, it was the most formidable booby trap ever conceived. Mercury is a deadly neurotoxin. Its vapors would make the atmosphere inside the tomb instantly lethal to any intruder. The emperor's architects created a hidden chamber that was not just difficult to find, but suicide to enter. This is why the central tomb mound remains one of the last great unexcavated sites in archaeology. The temptation to uncover what lies within is immense. Could the underground palace be perfectly preserved, its pearl-starred ceilings and mercury rivers intact? Might the emperor's sarcophagus be surrounded by even greater treasures than the terracotta warriors? The potential knowledge to be gained is staggering, yet the risks are equally profound. Any attempt to breach the tomb could release a cloud of toxic vapor, endangering the archaeological team and potentially contaminating the local environment. Furthermore, after more than 2,000 years sealed in a delicate equilibrium, the sudden introduction of air, light, and changes in humidity could cause the entire structure to collapse or its priceless contents to rapidly decay. The very measures the emperor took to protect his eternity are now protecting it from our curiosity. So we are left with a profound ethical and scientific dilemma. The sealed vault of Qin Shi Huang is the ultimate test of our discipline. Do we risk destroying this unparalleled time capsule to satisfy our desire for knowledge? Or do we honor the emperor's final, grand design by allowing his hidden kingdom to remain just that hidden? For now, the answer is to listen from a distance, using our non-invasive tools to map the shadows of this underground universe. This ultimate hidden chamber, therefore, stands as a silent monument not just to one man's obsession with immortality, but to the limits of exploration itself. Some secrets are so grand, so perfectly concealed, that their greatest power lies in their preservation, reminding us that the past has a right to keep its mysteries. Now let's step onto the playing alley of a great Mayan ball court. Picture a long, narrow corridor flanked by towering, sloping walls with stone rings set high above the ground. This was not merely a sports arena, it was a stage for a ritual that blended athletic prowess, high-stakes gambling, and profound spiritual belief. The game itself, played with a solid rubber ball that could weigh several pounds, was a fast and often brutal contest. But recent discoveries suggest that the most captivating aspect of the experience may not have been what the spectators saw, but what they heard. Acoustic studies have revealed that some of these courts were built with a hidden secret, a resonance chamber, a hollow space deliberately constructed beneath the stone floor of the playing alley. This was not a room for storage or a tomb for a sacrificed player. It was something far more ingenious. The court was, in effect, a massive musical instrument, and this hidden chamber was its soundbox. When the heavy rubber ball was struck by a player's hip or forearm and slammed onto the court's surface, the impact would have created a powerful thud. But instead of that sound simply dissipating, the hollow space beneath would have captured the vibration and amplified it, transforming a physical impact into a deep, resonant boom that echoed throughout the entire court. The effect would have been both visceral and awe-inspiring. Imagine the sound not as a simple noise, but as a dramatic punctuation mark to every major play, a percussive note that reverberated in the chests of everyone present. This was not an accidental byproduct of the architecture. It was carefully engineered. The dimensions of the chamber, the thickness of the floor above it, and the overall shape of the court would have all been calibrated to produce a specific acoustic signature. The sound was designed to be imposing, to add a layer of sonic grandeur to the physical spectacle. This auditory manipulation served a purpose that went far beyond mere entertainment. In the Maya worldview, the cosmos was alive with sound and vibration. Creation myths often involved the gods speaking the world into existence. Therefore, sound was not just a physical phenomenon, it was a creative, divine force. The deep, echoing boom produced by the ball striking the resonant floor would not have been perceived as just a game sound. It would have been interpreted as the voice of the earth itself, or perhaps the roar of a jaguar, a powerful animal spirit. In some of the most important ritual games which could culminate in human sacrifice, the sound may have been seen as the approving or disapproving voice of the gods, a direct auditory signal from the supernatural realm commenting on the action unfolding below. The game became a conversation, with the player's actions prompting a response from the world of the spirits, made audible through the hidden chamber. This transforms our understanding of the ball game from a simple sport into a multi-sensory religious experience. The players were not just athletes, they were actors in a cosmic drama, and the court was their stage. The hidden resonance chamber was the special effect that made the drama feel real. It connected the mundane action of a ball game to the sacred forces that governed the universe. For the spectators, the sound would have created a powerful psychological atmosphere of awe and reverence, reinforcing the idea that they were witnessing an event of cosmic significance, where the fate of the community, ensuring rain, agricultural fertility, or victory in war, hung in the balance. The architects of these courts demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of both physics and psychology, using hidden space not to conceal an object, but to manufacture a spiritual experience. They knew that true power often lies not in what is seen, but in what is felt and heard, turning a sporting event into a resonant dialogue with the gods. For centuries, the only way to find a hidden chamber was by accident, a lucky stumble, a crumbling wall, or the whispered clue on a fragile papyrus. The alternative was brute force, the swing of a pickaxe or the thrust of a shovel, methods that risked destroying the very secrets they sought to uncover. Today, that paradigm has been utterly transformed. We are no longer treasure hunters. We have become archaeological radiologists, equipped with a suite of non-invasive technologies that grant us a form of gentle X-ray vision, allowing us to diagnose the health of ancient structures and see the ghosts of rooms within them without ever touching a stone. This technological revolution is the silent partner in every discovery we have explored, a toolkit that is turning the fantasy of seeing through walls into a routine scientific practice and ushering in what can only be described as a new golden age of discovery. Perhaps the most visually dramatic of these tools is LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. Imagine an aircraft flying over a dense, impenetrable jungle canopy, like those covering vast Mayan cities in Guatemala or ancient temples in Cambodia. Instead of a camera, it fires millions of pulses of laser light toward the ground at an incredible speed. Most of these pulses hit the tops of trees and vines, but a fraction of them manage to slip through gaps in the foliage, strike the ground, and bounce back to a sensor on the aircraft. By measuring the precise time it takes for each pulse to return, a computer can filter out all the returns from the vegetation, digitally stripping away the entire green blanket of the forest to reveal the bare earth below. What emerges from this digital cleansing is nothing short of magical. The unmistakable geometric shapes of man-made structures, pyramids, plazas, roadways, and reservoirs that have been hidden for a millennium. LiDAR doesn't just find a single chamber. It redraws entire maps of lost civilizations, revealing urban landscapes on a scale that ground surveys could never have achieved, proving that sometimes the biggest secrets are hidden not underground, but in plain sight beneath a ceiling of leaves. While LiDAR skims the surface, other technologies delve deep into the heart of massive stone monuments. This brings us back to the Great Pyramid and the stunning discovery of the Big Void, a feat accomplished by a technique that sounds like it was borrowed from a particle physics laboratory, muon tomography. To understand this, we need to remember that our planet is constantly being bombarded by cosmic rays from deep space. When these rays collide with atoms in the upper atmosphere, they create a shower of secondary particles, including muons. These muons are like heavy, super-penetrative electrons, and they rain down on us every second, passing harmlessly through our bodies and our buildings. Crucially, they can pass through hundreds of feet of stone, but they are absorbed by denser materials. The Scan Pyramids project placed special muon-detecting plates inside known chambers of the pyramid. By analyzing the number and trajectory of muons that passed through the stone above them, they could create a density map of the pyramid's interior. When the detectors registered a surge of muons coming from a specific direction, it indicated that the muons were passing through less dense material, in other words, a void. It was this cosmic sleuthing that revealed the hidden chamber above the Grand Gallery, a discovery made not by digging, but by patiently listening to the whispers of the universe. For structures that are buried rather than built upward, the tool of choice is often ground-penetrating radar, or GPR. This technology works on a principle similar to the sonar used by submarines. A device is dragged over the ground, and it emits a pulse of high-frequency radio waves into the earth. When these waves encounter a change in the subsurface, a buried wall, a cavity, or even a different type of soil, a portion of the energy is reflected back to a receiver. By timing the return of these signals, the system can build a detailed three-dimensional picture of what lies beneath. GPR is what allows archaeologists to map entire Roman villas hidden beneath farmers' fields, to locate unmarked graves in medieval cemeteries, or to chart the subterranean tunnels beneath a Neolithic mound without ever breaking the turf. It turns the soil into a transparent medium, revealing the ghostly footprints of history that lie just inches below our feet. What makes this new era truly exciting is the spirit of collaboration that fuels it. The Scan Pyramids project is a perfect example, uniting universities from Japan and France with engineers from Egypt in a shared mission. This is no longer the era of the lone archaeologist with a whip and a fedora. It is a time of international teams where data is shared, findings are peer-reviewed, and the collective brainpower of physicists, geologists, engineers, and historians converges on a single problem. These technologies are also becoming more accessible and refined. Drones equipped with LiDAR can now survey difficult terrain with unprecedented ease. New algorithms can process GPR data with greater clarity, distinguishing between a natural fissure and a man-made wall with increasing accuracy. Each scan, each survey, adds to a growing body of knowledge, creating a digital archive of the world's heritage that will be invaluable for future generations, especially as climate change and urban expansion threaten these irreplaceable sites. We are not just discovering hidden chambers, we are perfecting the art of seeing the unseen, ensuring that the next great revelation is only a radar pulse or a muon detector away. From the pyramids of Giza to the temples of the Maya, the journey through these 24 hidden chambers reveals a truth far more profound than any single artifact could convey. History, we are learning, is not a closed book sitting on a shelf, its story fully told. It is a living narrative, a manuscript with entire chapters yet to be read, and the discovery of each new void is like finding a missing page that forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the plot. These spaces were never truly empty. They were filled with intention, with belief, and with the silent echoes of the minds that conceived them. A void above the Grand Gallery is not merely an architectural gap. It is a question mark carved into stone, challenging our most basic assumptions about the purpose of the world's most famous monument. A sealed crypt beneath the Hagia Sophia is not just a forgotten room. It is a time capsule preserving a layer of the building's soul through conquest and conversion. Each chamber, from the Resonant oracle room in Malta to the submerged strongroom of a Phoenician ship, adds a new dimension to our understanding, proving that ancient ingenuity was often expressed not in what was built up, but in what was deliberately hidden away. What becomes overwhelmingly clear is that the greatest treasures these civilizations left for us were rarely gold or jewels. While precious metals were hoarded and hidden for practical security, the most enduring legacy is knowledge. The hidden scriptorium in a medieval monastery safeguarded the very texts that would later fuel the Renaissance. The concealed observatory chamber within a Babylonian ziggurat protected the precise astronomical data that laid the foundation for modern science. The ancient impulse to hide was not always about greed or fear. It was often about reverence for information that was considered too powerful, too sacred, or too vital to be lost. In their quest to protect these assets, they inadvertently preserved them for us, creating a delayed communication across the centuries. The real value of the hidden chamber is not the space itself, but the window it provides into the priorities, the intellect, and the spiritual depth of the people who created it. They teach us that these cultures were far more complex, more technologically adept, and more philosophically sophisticated than we often give them credit for. This ongoing revolution in discovery is fueled by a technology that feels like a superpower granted to modern archaeology. We are no longer relying on luck or destructive excavation. Tools like ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR, and muon tomography are acting as our collective X-ray vision, allowing us to conduct a gentle, respectful conversation with these ancient structures. We can now ask the stones what they contain, and they are answering in the language of cosmic particles and reflected radio waves. this is not the end of exploration, it is the beginning of a new, more profound phase. The non-invasive nature of these technologies means that we can investigate without endangering the very wonders we seek to understand, preserving them for generations yet to come while still satisfying our innate human curiosity. And so, the search is far from over. In fact, it has just accelerated. With every survey, every scan, we add another piece to the infinite puzzle of our past. The next great discovery might not even be on our radar yet. It could be a completely unknown network of tunnels beneath a known archaeological site, revealed by a drone equipped with lidar sweeping over a dense forest. It might be a sealed chamber under the Sphinx, its contents finally confirmed by a new generation of muon detectors. Or it could be an entirely lost city, its outline emerging from the digital cleansing of a jungle canopy. The next revelation is waiting not for a lucky stumble, but for the precise pulse of a radar signal, the careful analysis of a soil sample, or the patient counting of cosmic rays. The silent hearts of these old stones have held their secrets for thousands of years, and they are only now beginning to whisper their stories to those who have learned how to listen. The journey through these 24 hidden chambers may be ending, but the exploration itself is far from over. If your curiosity has been ignited by these ancient secrets, the adventure can continue right here. By subscribing to the channel and tapping the notification bell, you will ensure you do not miss our upcoming deep dives into other incredible historical mysteries, from lost cities submerged beneath the sea to enigmatic artifacts that defy explanation. Your engagement is what fuels this quest for knowledge. We are genuinely eager to hear which of these hidden spaces captivated you the most. Was it the cosmic-scale mystery of the Great Pyramid's void, or the intimate, resonant power of the Oracle Chamber in Malta? Do you believe, as we do, that the next great discovery is waiting just beneath the surface, ready to be revealed by a new pulse of radar or a clever algorithm? Share your own thoughts and theories in the comments below. Some of the most fascinating ideas come from the conversations we have with this insightful community. For those of you who feel compelled to delve even deeper into the worlds of archaeological technology and ancient engineering, be sure to explore the links waiting for you in the video description. We have curated a selection of recommended books, groundbreaking documentaries, and online resources that will take you to the very frontier of modern discovery, offering a closer look at the tools and minds that are rewriting history one hidden chamber at a